Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a chess opening video that may change your life. In this video, I'm going to be covering the Gotham Scandinavian, which is an opening that has netted me a 100% win rate in a specific variation and an 80% overall win rate in the entire opening. Right now, I am loving the Scandinavian. I'm loving the way that I play it. A while ago, a couple of years ago, I made kind of a basic introductory Scandinavian video. This one will be completely different. And I also recently launched a Scandinavian defense course. If you're lucky enough to catch this video the first day it comes out, that course is on sale right now. I'll put a link in the description. But also, it has a massive free sample. So if you like what you see in this video, the first line of the description will be that course. And you can get the free sample. 100% free, no questions asked, and you can add the Scandinavian to your toolbox. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to analyze the Scandinavian the way that I like it, the Gotham Scandi. Then I'm going to show you 3 games that I've played with it, including against the #2 ranked player on planet Earth. If you can play your favorite chess opening against the #2 ranked player in the world and get the position that I got, I think this opening is worth showcasing. Then I will show you a couple of my other highlights and victories, and we're going to have a great time. So the Scandinavian defense is a really fun opening, and it begins after e4. And the reason why it's fun and it's offbeat is that it forces white into a decision from the very first move. Now, the computer is always going to say white is a touch better in certain openings, but I want you not to even look at the evaluation, but rather look at the position. White is going to be studying King's Pawn, Sicilian, French, Caro-Kann. This move forces white now to react to us. And the other reason I like the Scandinavian is the odds of you getting a certain position on the board are very high. That's the effectiveness of learning an opening. The chance of you getting pawn takes d5 is over 90%. And after you take back with the queen, of course, there's other openings like the Portuguese gambit, which I do like very much as well. This is the pure Scandinavian, bringing out the queen, and the odds of you getting attacked by this knight are also about 80%. So the odds of this being the opening position of your opening are extremely high. And now the retreating squares for this queen are off to the side, 1 back, and all the way back. All the way back is actually quite popular. Slightly back is the 3rd most popular, but I would like to rotate our queen to the edge of the board, and here is going to be our developing plan in the Gotham Scandi, okay? Previous video, I had like an introductory concept. I said develop your knight like this, develop your bishop, but I have worked on this opening, and I've perfected this opening, and now I'm going to share it with all of you. The way we're going to develop is we're going to play knight to f6. The bishop will frequently come to the f5 square. Sometimes it will go to g4, depending on how white develops. And then we will develop our pawn, we will develop our bishop, and depending on which setup white chooses, we will castle there or we will castle there. Remember, listen to me. If you are confused at any point, there's a free sample that will go in much greater detail than this video, with exercises, with videos, with drills. All my courses come with multiple ways of learning an opening, not just video. So if you haven't checked out Chessly, which is my chess courses website, mine, they don't sponsor me, you definitely should. Now, the most common setup by white is d4, knight f3, okay? This setup with the pawn here, with the knight here, and the bishop out on the c4 square. It can happen in any order. It can be knight out, it could be pawn out, but generally white is going to play like this, and if white plays like this, we will fulfill our Gotham Scandi opening setup. If, however, white decides to target our queen, which does happen quite frequently, like we develop our knight, and then white, instead of playing this move, let's say plays bishop to d2, then we play bishop g4 in one go. And the idea is, while white has blocked their queen's defense of the center, and they are targeting us here, we're safe. We're safe. Don't panic when the bishop comes over here if the knight cannot actually create a meaningful threat. If the knight goes there, we take it. If the knight goes there, we can't take it, but we will slide our queen over to safety. If the knight goes there, then, we take it. So you gotta be a little bit on your toes here, and it depends where white is going to set up, but all of that is covered. Bishop g4, knight c6, castle queenside is the way we're going to play. The most common way that white likes to play this position is knight f3. bishop f5, bishop c4, we play pawn to e6, and I like to put my bishop there, trade the bishop for the knight, and I will show you where I win 100% of my games. Bishop d2, bishop b4. Again, white could play castles, then bishop d2. Doesn't matter. Bishop here, trade the bishop for the knight when it's attacked, only when it's attacked, only when it's attacked. Slide the queen back to the b6 square where it's comfortable. And from this position, I have played, I believe, 15 games at this very moment, and I have a 15-0 record, which is unheard of in an opening. The position is roughly balanced, and what I like to do before I commit my king is I like to play knight c6, and I'm setting a trap. I have eyes on the d4 pawn. And for this game, what's going to happen is I'm going to put a rook on d8. I'm going to put pressure on white's position like this. This bishop, which I've granted to white, the dark squared bishop, is not particularly powerful or useful. It's sort of stuck. And I will try to remove the defender of the knight, win the pawn, or I'm going to try to put pressure here, or put my knight on e4 or d5, take this bishop, and remove the control like this. Position's in the balance, but I've had people play all sorts of things, and the trap that I'm setting is pawn to d5. The trap is that I haven't castled, and my opponent is going to think, what a dummy, oh my goodness, I'm going to attack their king. But since I haven't castled short side, I'm setting a trap to castle long, and suddenly, white is caught. They can't take the knight because they're going to lose the queen, so I'm threatening to just simply take this pawn on d5, and I will show you a game a bit later which went exactly like this. I've had a few games go like this, and white is already almost lost. White has to defend basically perfectly because the alternative is simply losing the queen. Now, you still have to be accurate. Surely, you don't just win the game because you get a good position from the opening, but this is about as good as you could ask for in about 15 moves. And if they don't fall for that, if they play rook e1, we castle, we put pressure on the knight, we put the rook on the file, and this is just about the most stable position that we can get in this opening. We'll put pressure on these pawns, we'll put pressure on the d file, get rid of the knight, or we will go get rid of that bishop to damage white's structure, and then we go on to convert a very nice game. That is the most common setup in this opening. So again, relatively straightforward, right? We developed our knight and our bishop to f5 in this setup. If white lets us, we will play bishop to b4. We will trade off the knight when we are attacked. Knight c6, queen slides back to b6, and then we will castle one way or another. If white falls for our trap, we go long. If white doesn't, then we will go short. That's a lot to remember. If that's too much to remember, you can obviously simplify it down for yourself. The more you learn about this opening, the more you learn kind of like the intricacies and the details. You will learn that the knight jump to the middle of the board is very lethal. That's another subtle detail. Your opponent, if they try to trap you with the knight, you got to respect that. And one of the best ways to get out with your queen in the Scandinavian is to play pawn to c6. You might not like that your queen is out and about, and so if you are developing in a certain way and your opponent is putting pressure on you, you might just say, you know what, I just want to bring my queen back like this. And that's probably fine as well. That's technically not the way I want you to play the Scandinavian, but you know what? This is still a very solid position. You have borderline no problems. You're rock solid. Your opponent cannot go d5. You'll play knight d7 and start advancing your pawns like this. Put a knight on the d5 square, and all your pieces are developed. Everything is good, and your opponent has no obvious weaknesses in your position that they could potentially exploit. So the position is very easy to play, actually. And again, I'm no rocket scientist, but I've been basically playing the Scandinavian the exact same way with some small, detail changes of whether I put the bishop on that square or that square. Very subtle. If you play the Scandinavian all the time with the bishop on f5, you'll probably be fine. If you play the Scandinavian all the time with the bishop on g4, you'll probably also be fine. But my Gotham Scandi is a mixture of these two moves, depending on how white sets up. Again, free sample, you can go play with it. I'm telling you right now, if you're like, what? This is too fast. I can't. I'm telling you, to add to your knowledge, you can try my free sample. There's no strings attached, okay? So if you want to take your learning to the next level, I do have a free offering of every course, but specifically this one, I'm really encouraging that you try some of these out, because it's 100. I'm not BSing you. Now let's take a look at some games, okay? Obviously, there's a lot more, and I could probably make an hour video covering the theory of the Scandinavian, but it's good to look at some practical games. I played Fabiano Caruana with the Scandinavian. And Fabiano respected this opening so much, that might be sarcasm, that in this position, he didn't even want to mess with my opening, and instead he played a goofy move, which is knight to h4. Nobody has ever played this against me. I've played probably 200 Scandinavian games. Just a very offbeat move, trying to get my bishop. And what did I do? I just slid it back to g6. I said, Fabiano, you want to take it? You're going to have to open up my rook. And Fabi, you know, and you see here, I'm kind of deciding which way I'm going to castle. I ended up playing here and castling short. And Fabi took my bishop. I kept a rock-solid pawn structure. I developed my rook to d8. And already here, I'm just maintaining relatively complete equality against the second best chess player in the world. And my game plan is pretty straightforward. I didn't get the exact setup I showed you, but again, I have my pieces all out on their active squares, and the Scandinavian is a relatively shy and tame opening until you find the pawn breaks. So in every Scandinavian position, you've got those pawn breaks that'll open up the position, make your position come alive, and your queen will either come back this way, but in this game, my queen rotated to that side of the board, which is another very common way of playing that Scandinavian. And you'll even see early on in the Scandinavian games, if your opponent never even attacks your queen, like if they just play knight f3, you can develop and castle queenside, and then when they try to come after your bishop, you can bring the queen not there, but you could bring the queen here and offer up the bishop as a sacrifice, and then just try to go checkmate your opponent. Queen f4, queen h5, be careful if you play queen h5 right away, there's a fork, but that's sort of the general idea. That's also in the course, by the way. But in this game, I got a very solid structure, and then I went for e5, and I just basically said, you know what? I'm not going to respect Fabio. I'm clearly respecting him because I'm down 40 seconds and I'm terrified, but I got a completely reasonable position against him. Take. He went knight here. I brought my queen back to defend my pawn, and I created this structure. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6 pawns on light squares, and I said, Fabiano, come and get me. And he might overtake me in the long run, but this is everything you can ask for in an opening. If you can be equal terms with Tony Moose, one of the best players in the world, and then be playing for a win and be competitive in the game a little while later, it's great. And, you know, we started shuffling. We got into a big fight for the center. I don't have a single piece in my position that is loose, meaning, like, can be targeted. These pieces are not guarded, but it's very difficult to attack them. B3, rook e8. And I was ready to get nervous in this game and end up losing it. But then we crossed 30 moves, and the position is still completely equal. Now, do I have 12 seconds? Absolutely. I'm terrified of my opponent. But the opening is a success, as far as I'm concerned, and I was very happy with this game because by the 35th move, I'm still completely on equal terms, and I was outmaneuvering, I was targeting his weaknesses, all of my pieces were active, but, you know, as fate would have it, I would get to 5 seconds on the clock, and then at that point, move 40, no opening can really save you. We were shuffling, we were maneuvering, pieces started falling off the board, and even here, it's an equal endgame. But here I made a mistake. I saw his rook coming in, I went here, and unfortunately now he just plays rook to d7. The best move here would have been for me to just activate my pawn really quickly so that it would be difficult for him to swarm. Rook d5, b4, if he goes after my pawn, I can try to play defense. I'm passive, and definitely white is playing this for a win, but hey, 40 moves against the second best player on the planet, you're just trying to beat 12 and 1400s, maybe 1800s, and I was very proud of this, and this is purely a Scandinavian. You know, this is not obviously a popular line. I have never seen the move knight h4 except in this game, but look what I did. I just brought out my pieces. Some of you may be wondering why I didn't develop my bishop to the b4 square. I could have, but I decided to do it like this. It's because he was, you know, his knight had wandered off and he was playing in a slightly offbeat way, so I thought I would target his king, but bishop b4 would have also been all right. And then I just kind of followed the game plan. I just centralized, struck in the center, and who knows, if my opponent was anybody except Fabiano, maybe this would have been a nice win for me. In a game where my opponent wasn't Fabiano, this is from my final match in the recent I Am Not a GM Speed Chess Championship. I had made it to the finals, and my opponent was Polina Shuvalova, a.k.a. Flawless Fighter. And there we go. This is one of the first Scandinavians I ever played. So this Scandinavian was played October 2023. This is when I was in my early days of practicing this opening a little bit more consistently, building up kind of my knowledge and my opinions of the opening. I played queen a5. We see this most common thing that I've showed you. This is not what Fabiano played. This is in a real game, real live action. Castles, and I played bishop to b4. Now, technically, very technical detail, technically black is only supposed to play bishop b4 when white plays bishop d2. And the reason for that is after castles bishop to b4, technically, white can move the knight. because there's no king there anymore. So white could say, haha, I'm maneuvering this way, and now I'm going to kick you out. And I've had that happen. And what I do when that happens is I just, remember like the Fabi game? Literally like the Fabi game, right? If a4, obviously I'll play a5. I don't want to get my queen trapped. And then I will bring out my knight, and it's just like the Fabiano game. I mean, seriously, like, let's say, you know, our opponent goes bishop d2, we play knight c6. It's the same setup that we had in the Fabiano game. I can even show you. See? Very similar structure. So a lot of this stuff can overlap. But she played bishop d2, so we did something called a transposition. It transposed. We took a different route, but we got there in the end. So she played this bishop d2, and we just saw this in the introduction. We know that here, instead of castling, I like to play knight c6 because I want to set the trap for d5. If you castle here, you'll be fine. a3, take, take. It's exactly what I was showing you. Your opponents might play knight e5, and you will play knight c6, rook d8, bishop g4, knight e4. All of this. Already showed this to you, and we go in a lot more detail in my free sample. Knight c6, and there's the position, and she fell into the trap. She's a very good player. She's 2760 blitz. The people you're going to play are half that rating. Maybe 2,000 points even lower than that rating in blitz. And she fell into the trap, and I castled queenside. Now she's going to lose the pawn. So what did she do? She did something natural. She took my knight. She was like, well, without his knight, he's not actually threatening as much my center, right? But that opened the attack on her king. Plus, I don't have to take right away and damage my pawns. I can undevelop my knight and then take with the knight. I don't actually have to, you know, and that's exactly what I did here. I could have played knight to e7, but instead I went here. And now my idea is to pressure the king, but also just take the pawn without splitting up my pawns. This must have been very annoying for her. And what I did here is I simplified the position even further. I took the knight. She went here, I forked her, forcing the queen to guard the bishop, and then I did this. And now rather than splitting up my pawns, I took on d5. So we've just played 17 moves, and I've emerged from the opening with a clean pawn up. In what other opening do you get one of the purest forms of a pawn up advantage? And not just a pawn up advantage. I am also looking to attack on the g file. I'm also looking to put pressure on the queen side. And that's life. Now, of course, this game was much more chaotic. There was a lot more ups and downs, and we will get into that, and I will, you know, entertain you a little bit. I tried to trade the queens with her because she was attacking my pawns. She did not want a queen trade. I played rook f5, and now we danced around here a little bit. I tried to attack her, but she defended. And then I said h5. And this is the way I was going to play this position. But her username is literally Flawless Fighter, so she began fighting. She tried to kick out my queen. I played queen c6. She tried to target the pawn near my king, and as you can see, I had a pretty big advantage a couple of moves ago, but right now I'm a little bit under fire. So b6, and she just goes directly at me, right? I could have converted this a little bit better. Maybe I could have been a bit more aggressive, but suddenly I'm like really on the defensive, and she is activating her pieces. Rook d3, she activates the queen. I'm in bad shape. I'm very nervous here, definitely stressing, and this could have been converted in a much better way. But we will go through the game, and the next game will be a very smooth conversion. Rook c8, she took my pawn, I took this pawn. Pawn started falling off the board like, you know, like I don't know, like what? Apples off a cart. A5. She attacks my queen, so I can't take because my rook is hanging. But I'm still a pawn up. I'm still holding on. I'm still a pawn up. I'm surviving. I'm still up a pawn, and now I start lining up against her king. But we're in a crazy scramble. We both have 5 seconds. Mistakes will probably be made. Queen takes a4. She goes queen h6. And I managed to get into an endgame. I have no idea why I didn't play rook takes f2 check. It's probably because I have 3 seconds on the clock. But as you can see, these pawns survive into the endgame. And I played a3. I played rook a5. And now she can't stop me from queening. So she took, and she resigned because my pawn is just making it through. This is a very common motif in a lot of my Scandinavian games. I usually win that pawn from that opening skirmish, and then what I do is I just pressure on the queen side, and then I go on and I win the game. And I'm going to show you a game where I did exactly that. This is a strong player, 2,500. Again, you're probably not even playing people who are 2,500. Watch how easy this opening can be. e4, d5, take, take. Knight c3, and we are again in this position where I have won 100% of the time. 100%. Now, of course, the criticism will be, but Gotham, there's positions where you've lost. Yes, It's clickbait. You don't always win 100% correct. But in this particular branch, which is the most popular, which means you will face it the most, I've won 100% of the time, which is how openings are effective. If I'm getting 100% win rate, and overall in the Scandinavian, meaning in this position, I'm getting 77, 78% win rate, it's a pretty darn effective opening. 78% is crazy. You're supposed to win 53% of the time. It means that the positions are tried and tested and clearly pretty easy to play. So again, let's go back to that position. Let's see what happens when an opponent does not fall for the trap. I have had everything under the sun in this position thrown at me. Rook e1, pawn to h3. I've had opponents go h3. Then I like to play rook d8. And then in this position, since I cannot pin them, which you know is one of the ideas, I like to castle, rook d1, and play knight e4. This is what I like to do. And a lot of people don't know what to do about this bishop. They don't want to damage their pawns, so they'll try to defend it. Then I take. They don't want to damage their structure, so they go here. And then I just double up my rooks. I play rook d6, rook d2, rook d8, rook d1, and we have this position. And it's equal, but then I try to attack their knight. I try to get rid of their knight, or I just wait a little bit. I slow play. Maybe I try to advance some of my pawns over here. I target their bishop. You know, if they run away with the bishop, I have rook c6. Maybe they're going to lose this pawn. And the pressure just sort of never stops. Queen b4, I want a pawn. Oops. Rook c2, bishop c2, rook c1. I go here. I'm going to take the knight and damage. And suddenly, white's entire position disintegrates. And it's just a matter of time before you break down that queen side. Now, in this game, my opponent went a4. I've seen that move before. So I just said, no, thank you. You can't control that. They went here. I castled. No reason to take. You don't have to take. You can take when you're ready. They went here. Now I'm ready. I take. White's dark squared bishop is completely bad. And now I play knight t5, and I'm already better. Black already has an advantage from the opening. I'm pressuring this. Pawn to c6 is on the way, and b2 is going to be a weakness, and I also have rook d8. I mean, you literally cannot ask for an easier position to play. It's just incredible. Like, it just drops in your lap like a silver platter. My opponent played rook a3, trying to take back with the rook, but that's a huge mistake. Because after take c6, my opponent will lose the pawn on b2 completely, and then they will lose all their pawns. If they didn't do that, I'm not sure what they could have done, but they went here. They made it worse for themselves. I took on b2, and now we are going to watch as I vacuum clean the rest of the pawns. They go here. I take this pawn. The pawn that they got to the center by playing this very natural, aggressive knight move, right? And a few moves later, it just perishes. Queen b2, queen e5. They take on f5, queen takes f5, and rook takes b7. And I'm just a pawn up, just like in the Polina game. Queens and rooks, and again, the queen side is going to be very useful. We can play rook d8, rook b8. Let's go here. Queen goes out to e2, rook d5, and now it's just about converting. We plant the rook on the powerful c5 square. Always good to get our king some breathing room as well. h6 will always be useful. I took on the pawn on c2. Now I'm 2 pawns up. Now I make a getaway square for my king, so I'm never mated. My king goes to g7, and now I just need to protect this diagonal, all right? And we do it. 2 pawns up, absolutely no threats to the king, and now we just have to either win this pawn or start rolling our pawns. Queen e5, always threatening the capture. Queen d4, now we've threatened a queen trade, and we are threatening the 3rd pawn. My opponent didn't want the queen trade, so instead they lost the 3rd pawn, and I mean, again, this game was just absolutely straightforward. Queen b2, get the queens off the board, run the king into the endgame, and just push, and my opponent resigned. When we do a game review of this game, I will check it for you. That was one of the easiest games I have ever played in this line, and it has nothing to do with my opponent. They just played somewhere. I was more comfortable. I knew the ideas. They played a couple of natural moves, not even realizing how poisonous the position could become, how dangerous the position could become, and got into a terrible situation. And I won. And my accuracy in this game, as we await for game review, 94%. And I don't even know where the inaccuracies were. The inaccuracies could be in the opening. Okay, one inaccuracy, according to game review, was moving my knight to the center. And instead, I should have played rook d8 first. So I should have attacked the queen before I moved the knight. But then it wants to move the knight there. And then rook d5. So already you have a much better endgame. This is kind of like barely an inaccuracy because we're just already up a pawn. It wants me to go here instead. I think for a human, that's not really understandable. Virtually a flawless game, and Game Review estimated my rating in this game at 3,200. And that's the way you play the Scandinavian. Did I do anything crazy in this game? Not really. And this position has come up so many times in my games, this exact position. You will be shocked. Of course, you will have other lines in the Scandinavian, but as you get stronger and stronger, you learn what to do against those. For example, you know that if your opponent doesn't play knight c3, as I showed you, if your opponent doesn't play knight c3, you develop your bishop like this, your knight like this, you castle queenside, and when they castle, you go on an attack. That is the game plan. And as you get stronger, you start adding more layers, but you have to prepare an opening against the most common things that you're going to face. And by far, and why I love the Scandinavian, the odds that you getting this and this and this or this, but we know that's not even particularly dangerous, but getting a setup with the two knights, the bishop out, the classical setup, super simple and straightforward. Friendly reminder, sale ends tonight. Go check out the course. If you like it, you can get it 25% off today. If you don't want to spend any money, no problem. Go try out the free sample. I will cover this exact thing in the free sample. That's all I have for you today. Go enjoy this new and updated Scandinavian opening. If you want to watch the old video, definitely make sure to check it out. I'm going to keep playing this opening. I'm going to keep having a blast. Now get out of here.